Alright guys, not 5 minutes ago I finished reading Before Watchmen Comedian #1. I figured I'd do a sort of a first impression, first thing off the top of my head review of the book real quick, and there will be spoilers. Okay? Now just a little setup, which will make sense here once we get in the book, is that in the Watchmen, the original Watchmen, I think it's in issue 9, which is the origin of Silk Spectre. There's a panel in there, a few panel sequences there where Laurie is in Washington at a party with some, high political figures there and stuff, and there's the comedian, hanging out with a bunch of people. I think this is in the probably early 70s or so, maybe, But anyway, and the comedian makes a joke to a bunch of them, just don't ask me where I was in Dallas back in '63 or whatever it was. So they always kind of alluded that the comedian shot John F. Kennedy. Ozymandias did some research, and one of his first cases, if not his first case, is that he tried to track down whatever happened to Hooded Justice, who had disappeared in the 50s due to not wanting to reveal his identity and everything. But yet it coincided with finding a dead wrestler or weightlifter or something from his circus. And he surmised, in his opinion, that the comedian had tracked down the Hooded Justice and had killed him and for revenge. Okay. Now, they had some advertisements back in the 80s when the Watchmen was getting started, and one of them was this, and that is the comedian being, doing some sniping here. And then all of a sudden it dawned on, that kind of led up to it, to, the fact that they were alluding that this guy shot Kennedy also. Even in the Watchmen movie, they had him in the grassy knoll. Okay, remember that. So all of a sudden, I read this book and I went straight, to get this. I had all these out just a few weeks ago for my Watchmen review videos. And I started looking closer at this, and it dawned on me, this newspaper, Who Watches the Watchmen, that didn't happen until the 70s. And then another thing that happened is that he's wearing the mask. And it never dawned on me, but he never wore the mask until after Vietnam. So this picture is actually from the 70s. I always, after reading the Watchmen and seeing the pictures, I just assumed he was in Dallas. And I started looking further back in this picture, and there's some kind of parade going on with, VIV starting out. So, Dave Gibbons got me again. That's, again, with the Watchmen, always figuring something out with it. So, he's assassinating somebody. I can't think of anybody of maybe Spanish descent or something, is what I'm thinking. But anyway, I can study this picture and try to decipher it. But anyway, so this picture is not him killing Kennedy. Alright, so right there, the split. And we're going to ignore the Watchmen movie. Now, getting on to the book. Now, first of all, Brian Azzarello, J.G. Jones. Okay? Interesting cover, kind of disturbing. So I start reading this, and it starts out, we're in a bungalow. The Wanderer's coming on. I thought it was the 50s. Turns out it's the early 60s. And what we have here is we start out, it's just comedian style, man, okay? He's standing on a bed naked. You can see the back of a blonde-haired lady with him. He reaches down, picks up a football, and it says, with love, love always, Joe. He's just kind of looking at it. And I'm sitting here like, Joe DiMaggio, why would he be saying love? So, I was already picking up. And of all things, this is how I would smile. Okay, so we have the comedian living in Camelot. It turns out that he is great friends with the Kennedy family. He's out there playing football with them, right? And I started reading this like, okay, that kind of fits, because if the Kennedy family were, they're called Camelot, the comedian would be their court jester in a way. But, he's actual friends with them, playing football, roughing up with them, not taking it easy. And you start having these ironic little pieces of dialogue, considering that, you assume that the comedian is the one that shot John F. Kennedy. And he's like, they talk about how he's kind of roughhousing, and they were talking about, you okay, Eddie? You about, pushed Kennedy there. He goes, what, me? What are you talking about? Taking out the president? That's all I need on a resume. And he's talking like in a football game. Man, I'm looking rough. Okay, so, he takes a break. He goes in there, and you see him, looking out the window. And Jackie O walks up to him. And just to get to the point of this was an interesting talk, because they're going about love and respect. They're establishing that Edward Blake actually may love the Kennedy family, and they may love him back, but there's some respect. Already the opposite of what we get out of Alan Moore's tales and stuff. And I was getting a little uncomfortable here, but then I'm thinking, okay, he does it. We get the comedian back because he goes, Jackie Onassis looks at him and goes, there's something I want to talk to you about. He's like, first he's like, sure, and then he like grins real big and is like, shoot. And she's like, oh, you are a funny guy. Jackie Onassis ends up hitting on him. And they're talking about a few things. He's supposed to be a crime fighter. I mean, Jackie O is setting him up, and he's saying he's not going to do anything. You know, they're alluding to this because he loves, respects the Kennedys. He can't say the word. Then she brings up Marilyn Monroe, calls her a drug-addled peroxide whore, and she's still alluding to the comedian. She's trying to get his wheels turned, saying, you know, she's taken up with a gangster now. You never know, you know, what she might be telling him, and she's hanging out with bad people, and he's a criminal and you're a crime fighter. You know, she's actually basically telling him to man up. So you come to find out that was Marilyn Monroe that he was sleeping with. And this is on the night she dies. She was married to Joe DiMaggio, so that's where the baseball came from. A lot of sports in there. He's a man's man. And there's the pills. He kisses her ass, and he walks out. Comedian was responsible for Marilyn Monroe's death. So we go on. We see a little bit more of this world. He's in a bar. They're talking football. He's talking with John, you know, the Kennedy family. Looks like it's Robert and Jack. I'm getting them all mixed up, but you get the point. Sorry. They're talking about football and games and all this stuff, and then the bomb is dropped. When the comedian went to the Pacific, apparently whatever aspect of government had the comedian in World War II, he met Kennedy in the Pacific, and they've been friends ever since. And he says another little ironic statement here, you know, talking about Kennedy saying, I'm taking off for that plane first thing in the morning, and you got to get out there. And he's like, well, I'll be there. And he's like, Eddie, we've been friends since the Pacific. You, the comedian, are a hero. And then they're like, he's getting picked on a little bit by the other brother. And then he goes, and not to blow my own horn, but I am too to some people. And maybe it's time for all good heroes to unite. Right there, we're going to like stop, all right? I want you to remember that. Maybe it's time for all good heroes to unite. And we just have like this look from the, you know, down there at that bottom panel. You know, it's kind of hard to read what's going on there, right? Is the comedian going to kill John F. Kennedy? That's what we're all thinking. It's what we all know. Yet we're having some more of these ironic statements. Now, remember the last time heroes tried to unite that the comedian was around was the night of the Crime Busters in issue 2 of the Watchmen. Okay? And he pretty much said it was all bullshit, and he said Captain Metropolis was just having a, you know, a midlife crisis, and they hear Moloch's back, let's all get together. So I have a feeling that that little statement there from Kennedy is what led to the Crime Busters not ever forming. Okay, so basically, I'm not real clear here. I may be going blank, but you know, the comedian's out on a mission. He gets briefed. He's put in a car. He's told Moloch is back. Good 2-page spread of them driving around. I mean, it's the early '60s, man, and it feels it. The cars. We got the coloring there is like, you know, little Watchmen, like a kind of an ugly yellow and stuff. And they're telling him that, okay, Moloch's back. And they're like, well, what's the big deal about, you know, prostitution? They went, no, he's moved up to narcotics. And they're starting to tell him, well, here's how the mission's going to go, okay? You're going to let local enforcement go in or something. We're going to let such and such go in, and then we're going to let you go in. He's like, right. He reaches down there, and he puts his foot on the gas pedal, makes the guy drive through the garage where Moloch and them are back. And then we get a little action. He's got a little smile. You get the idea he's done this many times. He just goes in there raising hell, smiling about it, getting shot at, doesn't give a crap if he's going to get shot or not, you know, and takes him out. You know, pretty good action. He's just kicking butt, and he's throwing people around. He busts in there, and he finds Moloch in his office, and he's crying. And when, in issue 2 of The Watchmen, when Rorschach went after Moloch, you know, Moloch woke up with him in his bed a few weeks or so before Comedian was killed, and it scared the crap out of him. And Comedian more or less said, you're probably the only friend I got. How messed up is that? My mortal enemy. Well, in this one, you know, it's like the comedian's acting like this is kind of a game. He comes in, and he's actually talking to Moloch, calling him names and stuff the way the Kennedy family was picking on him. This is all about men being men and friends, and to me, you think friends, you think everybody gets along and stuff, but guys pick on each other. The more hell they're raising on you, the closer they are. And all of a sudden, here he is, remember that from the Watchmen. He's treating Moloch like a friend, and maybe Moloch never got that, because he starts going, okay, Moloch the misfit, hands where I can see him. And Moloch's crying. Jesus, how many times have we been through this? Pull a gun, put up a fight or something, anything. God, don't be such a... And he turns around, he's like, Moloch, what's crying? He realizes he's crying. He said he's been shot. Kennedy's been shot. And they're sitting there and they're sharing this moment, and he's trying to put a gun on him. The comedian's still trying to be comedian, and eventually he breaks down. They're listening to the news report. He's still holding the gun on Moloch, but he's watching this. Moloch's just crying, and finally we get the comedian crying with that hand on his face like he cried in the Watchmen. Alright, so basically they finally have a talk, and he wants a drink. He's like, where's a drink? Top drawer, where's a drink, damn it? So the comedian's drinking and crying again, and it's LV whiskey. And I'm almost wondering if I go back and look in the Watchmen book if that's the same whiskey he's drinking, if they even show it. So, you look around, and all of a sudden it dawns on the comedian, hey man, I don't see any drugs around here. He's like, drugs? Is that why you're here? And, he's like, well, he's like, if that's the reason you're here, well, you shouldn't be here. There are no drugs. And all of a sudden, they share this moment, and we got, what are we going to do now? The president's been shot. He's been assassinated. Now we know the comedian didn't do it, and he's sitting there with Moloch. Now, right there, my gut instinct was like, they messed it up. What have they done? Calmed down for a minute. Went and found that little picture I showed you. Came back, and that's why I'm shooting off the hip here with this. This, if you sit all the way through that. What I'm predicting here, what I'm thinking is that maybe the story is going to be him, the comedian, figuring out that he was taken out of the way so somebody could get to Kennedy. Kennedy was set up, and they took him out of the way. So we got the comedian with his old war buddy, if it's even possible for a comedian to have his old war buddies. And the last words that Kennedy spoke to him was like, maybe it's time for heroes to unite. Maybe that's the story here. Maybe the comedian is going to go show you why he's the comedian, and he does all of this without any of the government guys knowing that he's doing it, and that's why he has to play the jerk and stuff. I got a feeling Brian Azzarello has taken us the complete opposite of what we were expecting the comedian to be, and it's going to be interesting to see. I've calmed down a little bit. That's the first story. We know the comedian didn't kill Kennedy, but he alluded that he did, so that's part of the story. I cannot see Brian Azzarello ignoring the fact that that's in the Watchmen book. We're going to see what really happened. I think we're going to end up seeing maybe how the comedian really works. This should be interesting. So I'm not going to get so far. I'm going to put this Silk Spectre #1 tops the list, Minutemen #2, and I'm going to give the comedian #3 ranking so far. Not that I'm going to be ranking them all the time, but definitely got to see where this goes with the comedian. Good stuff. You got to think. You got to read between the lines a little bit, and we'll see where it goes. All right. Thanks for hanging in there.